Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona, and this is the December 9th edition of Horses to Watch, where I highlight some horses to follow and potentially bet back on the New York circuit and walk you through a little bit of my trip handicapping process. This week I'm going to take a look back at three races from last Friday at Aqueduct. We've got two turf races and one dirt race. This is probably the last batch of turf races we're going to get out of New York, at least on this show, because really we're probably going to end. It's early December now. We've got some snow already coming down today, so I don't think there's going to be too much turf racing in the coming weeks. So we'll see where we bet these horses back in the future, because some of them might go south to Florida. We might not see some of them for a period of months after this, but I still think it's worth being aware of some of these trips as they happen in real time. So let's start with the third race from last Friday. It's a allowance numbers of 1 going a mile and a 16th on the outer turf course. And I want to focus on the number 3 horse, Scano. Let's break them from the gate, and you see that Scano breaks from the inside, even though he's number 3, and the horse breaking to his outside is the eventual winner, Winter's Back. Now, Scano is a horse with plenty of tactical speed, but for whatever reason, his rider elected to show no aggression coming out of the gate, and basically just concede the early lead to that eventual winner, Winter's Back. And to make matters even worse here, coming by the stands for the first time, he's not even securing that position right in behind that horse. He vacates that spot to a couple of other stalkers to his outside, and he takes them all the way back into 4th position, a good 3 to 4 lengths off the lead. And that's just a little bit too far back, considering how slow the pace of this race was projected to be and how slow it actually turned out to be. You see the fractions going up there, 24 and 3 for the opening quarter. Winter's Back's going to slow it down even more heading on to the backstretch. And now as they're moving down the backside, you see that number 3 horse, Scano, now all the way back in 5th. He starts to get a little bit rank under Jose Ortiz. He's just not really comfortable being that far up the pace. He is a horse that, if you look at his PPs, he's closed from farther back in the past, but he's done it into some faster paces. And he's not a horse with a really electrifying turn of foot by any means. He's much more of a grinder. If anything, a mile and a 16th is a little bit on the short side for him. He's a horse that just kind of wants to wear down foes over slightly longer distances. And you see her coming around the far turn. He just continues to get shuffled back because that horse right in front of him, that long shot, the number 7, he's really going nowhere. So Jose has to pause briefly, swing to the outside here, and now he's going to try to sprint past the entire field to the finish, because this leader, Winter's Back, has a ton left, and he's just going to sprint to the wire. And like I said, that's not really Scano's game, to show acceleration, display a turn of foot, and run past horses in the lane. And you see a closer, even it passes him in the final 1/8 of a mile here, the number 2 getting up for 2nd. He just misses 3rd on the wire here, Scano does. All in all, it was just the wrong trip for a horse that appeared to be in good form coming into this race. He was actually coming off his career best performance last time out at Aqueduct, when he made a big run, a big middle move actually, into a slow pace. Wasn't able to duplicate that form here, but I think it had a lot to do with the trip that he got. So he's one that I would give another shot to at this level next time with a more fair pace scenario. Let's move on to the other turf race that I wanted to talk about at Aqueduct from last Friday. It's race 6 on the card. It's an optional claiming allowance race, $80,000 optional tag. The horse I'm going to talk about was not in for the tag. This one's going 6 furlongs on the turf course for the 2-year-olds. Let's break them from the gate, and I want to focus on the number 7, Swashbuckle. This is a horse who had won his debut going a route distance at Belmont for Christophe Clement. Had done that against New York breds. He's stepping up against Open Company here. The big question for him was whether he would be sharp enough to compete, turning all the way back to 6 furlongs in his second start after debuting in that route race. Well, it turns out he was actually a little bit too sharp, because you see about a furlong into the race here, he's getting way too keyed up under Joel Rosario. This pace is pretty quick, and this horse is trying to rush up in between horses as they break for the half-mile pole here and go around the far turn. You can't quite see it on the pan, but if you watch the head-on, this horse is trying to get out pretty badly, and he's actually going to bump that horse to his outside, out of his way, coming around the far turn, and Joel has to kind of yank him back to the inside. And you see here, he's just not really riding him. He's giving a couple light taps of the whip on the right side just to keep him from bearing out that tendency he showed as they broke for the turn. And Joel, he's typically got a plan in these races. When you're riding a closing sprinter, you want to get your horse to relax early and unleash a turn of foot in the stretch. And he can just tell at this point that the horse really ran his race in the early portion here. The horse that got the right trip is the eventual winner, the number 4. It's a Gamble, who was a good good 5 lengths behind Swashbuckle on the backstretch. But Swashbuckle, that number 7 horse, he just expended too much energy fighting the rider early. And Joel Rosario doesn't really exert any energy asking this horse through the stretch. Some might say that he gave up a little prematurely, but I'm going to trust the rider that he knew he didn't have the horse in him coming down the stretch here. And I just think Swashbuckle is a horse that showed some professionalism first time out going that longer distance, just kind of lost his cool, too keyed up going the sprint distance next time out. He probably is a horse that ultimately wants to go longer, so I just give him a pass for this race and look for him in a more logical spot going longer next time out. Final race I want to discuss from last Friday's card was actually the finale, race 9. It was a New York bred maiden claiming race, $40,000 claiming price, going a mile on the dirt. And I don't often highlight horses that won races, but I think this is a situation where you want to pay special attention to the horse that crossed the wire first in this race, and that's the number 1 Make It in New York. Let's break these horses from the gate, and you'll see it's the number 1 horse breaking from the inside post position. And his jockey, Jorge Vargas, is going to hustle him away from the gate to try to get him into a more forward position. And he's not a front runner by any means, but he's just trying to keep this horse in contact with the field early, because if you watch this horse's debut, he was extremely sluggish. He had made 1 prior start to this, going 6 furlongs at Belmont, and he just completely lost contact with the field, was far back through the opening stages of the race, just never really got involved. His rider basically gave up on him that day and then asked him for run at the very end of the race, and the horse basically sprinted across the wire like he had done no work during the race. So this was his second start, dropping down to the $40,000 tag. And you see Vargas here on the inside. This pace is pretty honest, and he's trying to keep this horse in contact with the leaders. He's not by nature the kind of horse that races in the bridle, so I'm trying to keep after him. He's got nowhere to go. He's not steadying in traffic or anything like that, but he's just stopping and starting. And now he's going to have a horse back up in his face here. He loses a bit of momentum. He's going to duck down to the inside, now go outside of that horse. And he's starting to gain momentum here. He's finally getting into a bit of a rhythm. Looks like he's going to gain a path outside of this horse from the red cap, but no, the door shuts there again. And he's just kind of, again, losing momentum in behind these horses. It's just not the kind of trip you want, especially over this Aqueduct dirt course, where taking kickback and behind horses has not been a recipe for success really the entire month that we've been racing here. And especially for an inexperienced 2-year-old, after experiencing all that adversity, now he ducks down to the inside and he's still going to keep on rallying, and he finds another gear here in the last 16th of a mile to just get up and pass this leader. I should mention the horse that's second in this race, the number 6 Double Pour. He ran quite well because he saw those fractions go up. They went, I think, 47 and 1 to the half. It's a pretty quick pace for these cheaper horses in a maiden claiming race when the final time is 140, but Double Pour was also out of the kickback, getting into a nice rhythm for the entire race, whereas Make It in New York, the eventual winner, was kind of stopping and starting, as I said, for the entire race. So I think this is a horse that we might see in a tougher race next time, whether they move him up to an allowance nominators of 1 race, a stakes, or a starter allowance if they actually get one of those to go. He escaped getting claimed here, so he's still with his old connections, and I think he's one that even though we got a lower speed figure in this race, we might see better out of him in the future. Well, those are all the horses to watch for this week. Remember, if you want to follow these horses moving forward, you can add these horses to your DRF watch mail. You can find that on DRF.com. You can make a list of these horses that you want to follow back. Then you'll get email notifications when they work, or they're entered, or they have results. So that's a good way to follow these horses. I always add these to a list after I do these episodes. So keep these horses on a list in your DRF watch mail moving forward. And remember that you can always catch these episodes of Horses to Watch every Wednesday. So stay tuned for another episode in the coming week.